welcome everybody to this webinar. I'm here with my friend Peter Lijnse, and we are here today to talk to you about some of the challenges that everyone seems to face in the BRM industry. Peter and I have known each other for a number of years, and you'll see us a lot at the BRM Connect conferences. Little plug for the BRM Institute here. The BRM Connect conference is coming up. I'm going to mute everybody, sorry. Um, the BRM conference is coming up this September in Kansas City. It is well worth it to attend. But for some reason, the BRM Institute always puts Peter and I next to each other. Whatever tables we have, we'll booze, and we always spend the whole conference we're just talking about questions that we're getting, and we have a lot of fun, and we share some laughs. And we were talking last time about since we're getting so many common questions, rather than trying to wait for a session at one of the conferences and waiting until the next year, why don't we do a webinar where we can just talk to people and answer whatever questions they may have, and also maybe just proactively cover some of the topics that you might have that we hear about, which is what we're going to do. So that's how we got here today. And we've been marketing it on LinkedIn, and we've been getting a lot of interest in it. And we're so glad that you're here with us today. I'm talking to you from sunny Florida, and Peter's talking to you from not so sunny Calgary. And
It is sunny. It is sunny. No, it's sunny. It might be colder than where you are, but it's sunny.
Sorry, it may be sunny, but it's a little cold. So just some brief introductions, because this is going to be a very informal session. You're going to see some slides, but there's no prepared presentations and overviews and polls. This is really for you to ask us the questions that may be on your mind, for us to share some of the answers to the topics that we've been getting, and have that kind of a session. If you do have questions, by all means ask them. You can, when we're done, we have 4 topics that we're going to introduce at the beginning. After that, by all means, raise your hand, and we'll call on you. If you want, you can ask questions in the chat. Elka will be monitoring the chat, and we'll bring up those questions afterwards. So just some brief introductions. I'm Jeff Warren. I am president of the Barclay Consulting Group, which I'd like to tell you is a really large organization, but I am the group. It's really just me. And we focus on working with IT organizations and with BRM programs and capabilities to build high-performing talent, to build BRM talent, BRM programs, and help IT organizations become more business-focused. I've been doing I started out my career, I am not a professional consultant. I started my career in IT. I'm an IT lifer. I was a COBOL programmer working on an IBM 360 mainframe to start my career. Went through the right technology path, the proper one, managed some teams, managed bigger teams, and eventually I became an IT executive, mostly working at the Estee Lauder companies in New York, where eventually I was on the IT leadership team. I headed up application development, and worked in creating the BRM program there back in 2004, long before there was a BRM Institute or BRM standards. And I would love to tell you that everything went perfect. It didn't. We made mistakes. And I always tell folks that deal with clients and people in the high-performing classes, don't be afraid to fail, because when you fail, as long as you learn from it, things will be great. Built a very strong program that I think is still going on at Estee Lauder, but I left there 9 years ago. Started the Barclay Consulting Group. And I have to tell you, I love consulting. I love meeting people like you, talking to new people all the time, helping people grow their BRM capabilities, and just really become more business-focused professionals. Peter?
Great. Thanks, Jeff. One of the challenges we will have in this session is that we both like to talk long time, so we'll sometimes have to cut each other off, but we'll get there. My name is Peter Lijnse. I'm originally from the Netherlands, but moved mid-90s to Canada. But my career started in consulting and training and facilitation in the end of the 80s, specifically in the IT service management space. I was one of the first groups that did ITIL certification at that moment. Um, so basically, I started with ITIL, IT service management, and then started to look at some of the the other frameworks, basically like Lean IT and governance, etc. So it always been in the coaching side. Since 2012, I've been working with BRM teams across the world, mainly North America and Europe, and have done a lot of different coaching of BRM teams and working with them. Nowadays, I still have, of course, the IT management knowledge, but I don't use it that often anymore. I work with a lot of BRM teams and BRM leaders, basically, that are sometimes outside of IT. So I don't necessarily focus only on the technology side. We also work with facility management. We work with HR, finance, etc., BRMs as well, and any BRM basically that is focused on that. We do the certification courses with Lead Consulting, and that company is twice as big as Jeff's company because we are with the two of us instead of just one person, and we focus on the certification courses from the BRM Institute, but we also have our own workshops around value and introducing BRM capability in organization and specifically relationship management techniques, etc. So we both. I mean, both Jeff and I basically have additional offerings and we actually are not. Sometimes people, one person actually asked me, "Are you working with your competitor to in a webinar? What are you doing?" And I had something like, "He's not my competitor. He's just someone I like to talk to." So that's how this got to this point. So that's what I leave it at. Let's go on to the topics.
Yeah.
So I'll give it back to Jeff.
Yeah, let's do that. So again, being mindful of the time, we all agree, we're going to try and do these initial topics. We're going to go through them fairly quickly. Certainly connect with either one of us if you want to dive into it a little bit more. But let's get that going. All right. So starting with the first topic, which we were asked, I've been asked quite a bit, and is really much more important and relevant today about how do you deliver high performance in BRM and in IT when budget's tight? And you all know me, you know how I love my quotes. And I love this quote, and it's in the high performing BRM class. We are all faced with a series of great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And what I think is so important about this is that when you look at this quote, we're all going to face tough times. We're all going to face budget cuts. We're always going to face lack of resources. Look at it as an opportunity. How do I turn this around? How do I do the things that I really can do? And look at this as my chance to shine rather than saying, woe is me, what am I going to do? I don't have the budget, I don't have the staff. Find better ways to do it. So just some thoughts around what you can do from a BRM perspective or from an IT perspective. When budgets are tightening, use it as fuel. Use this as the opportunity to really shine and drive change. Find ways now that you can be looked at to help reduce or eliminate costs. It's interesting. I was talking to a federal government agency recently, and they were saying that they've got to put everything on pause for BRM because BRM is in jeopardy. And I said, ironically, BRM is the group that can help them find efficiencies because really you can find cost savings and cost avoidance opportunities where nobody else can. I'm not going to go through this, but if you see all of these areas, BRM has this great opportunity to find ways to save money or leverage existing things where budgets can actually be positively affected by it rather than causing an increase in spend. You can uncover ways for your business partners and for IT to become more efficient. Don't think you need budget to do that. You can do journey mapping to find different areas to be more efficient. Help prioritize efforts that can actually reduce costs or increase growth that may be buried lower in the portfolio, get them raised up because they'll get their immediate wins that way, and highlight payback for future ideas. Where there's a will, there's a way. You don't have to put everything on the side because budget's tight. Find a way to find that future payback. Second, become more of a presence with your partners and with the provider. Now, if budgets are down or turning down, you have more time to spend with them. Highlight those wins, the efforts, and the opportunities. Look for opportunities where you can now educate your partners on solutions that you already have in the organization. So many IT organizations have solutions, document management systems, CRM, artificial intelligence, all these video mobile apps that are built for a particular business unit. Well, now maybe there's the opportunity to take a step back and see, is there a way we can give this to other business partners because we already have it? Then there's a great way to do that. Work with your partners to make do with what you have, right? You only have these things. As it says there, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. If this is all we have, how do we make things better with what we already have? And how can we do more with what we already have? They say that people use about 20% of the actual solutions that they have. They don't use the other 80% that really can make a difference. Bring in guest speakers and tech leaders to hold some executive briefings when budgets are tight. People want to come in and speak. Peter and I would love to come in and speak. We don't charge for those types of things. It's the more you can get out, the better off you're going to be. And you can facilitate that, whether it's with consulting companies or with technology companies. Consider thought leadership activities. Think about teaching or holding design thinking workshops, innovation sessions, etc. Look for the opportunity when budgets are tight to develop your own time, your own team. Take the time to breathe and grow. What internal improvement areas can you make for yourself and for your teams? How can you learn more about immersing yourself in your business partner's operations? Doesn't take budget for that. Drive opportunity, find ways that they can use technology to make things better. Educate your BRM team on industry trends and innovations. Remember, BRMs, their knowledge should be a mile wide, but an inch deep. You need to know a lot of technologies when you're a BRM, but you only need to know a little bit about it. We have those people that are a mile deep and an inch wide. Those are the experts. But use this time when budgets are tight to attend webinars like you're doing now, to go onto Google to educate yourself, to go to companies and get executive briefings. Develop synergies with your internal IT teams. Maybe use this time to start learning more about what they do and build these partnerships. And finally, connect with BRM teams in other organizations. Join the BRM Institute communities, people that are in the same situation, commiserate with them a little bit and learn more about how other organizations are doing BRM so you can start implementing some of the things that they've done. But don't forget to market your successes. When you do this, make sure you focus on what's in it for them. Don't talk about the things that IT has done about from a technical or an IT perspective. Market your successes to your business partners that you've done in the past and that you've done now. Let them know what you've done to make them better while budgets are tight. But most importantly, here's what you shouldn't do when budgets are tight. Do not slow down. Don't just think, well, budgets are tight, so we need to slow down too. That's what some people will tell you. It's actually the time to accelerate. Don't allow the lack of budget to stifle your drive or your creativity. That is also, it's a morale buster sometimes. That's why I said, use this as opportunity, use this as fuel. The more you can look at this as this is our time to shine, the better off you're going to be, and be creative in how you can do things. Don't fall into the background. Please don't do that. BRM organizations have a tough time with this sometimes. Make yourself known, make yourself seen and heard, allow them to understand the greatness of what you do. Don't become operational. Don't think, well, I don't have some things to do with my business partners, so let me help out the service desk. Let me help out the project management team, because once you start doing that, when budgets come back, they're going to want you to continue to do those things. And we want to stay on the growth and the transformational side as much as we possibly can. And certainly, don't wait for things to get better to do something great, because who knows how long this is going to last? A month? A day? A year? And maybe never, because sometimes when budgets change, sometimes they change for good. So don't think, well, I'll just hold on those ideas until things get better. Do it now. You really have that opportunity. So those are some of the things that you should consider in these times where budgets are tight, that there's a lot that you can do. You just have to take that drive yourself, that inner passion you have, and get your team motivated to do those things and find the opportunities that you have. Peter?
Yes, I am going to add to that because everything Jeff said, I fully agree with. But I want to talk about a very specific thing, and he mentioned something that I want to bring back here as well. So, a lot of organizations talking about value and impact, and I think when you're in in a time where budgets are tight, etc., value and impact becomes even more important. But to be honest, it is always important to understand what the value is. Value is an interesting word. A lot of organizations are using it, a lot of frameworks are using it, and everyone has a different perspective on it. It's one of those things where I always say value is a language. Yeah. And when we talk about value, we need to make sure that we understand each other. We need to understand that we are using the right words. And one of the things I normally say, technology by itself has no value. And some people have, what do you mean by that? There's no value in technology. There's value in the use of technology. And the value of the use will come through from a business perspective. And that's what we quite often look for, value and impact. Can I have the other next slide?
Yep.
One of the things we do with a lot of business relationship managers, but also leaders in any organization, is focus on how can we clearly define value and impact for the organization. And that starts with strategy. Yeah. And if you're looking at your context and your strategy, what is currently happening in my organization, I need to have that situational awareness. And I need to understand what are some of the things that we're trying to accomplish. And if that's budget cuts or if it's maybe just expanding revenue, whatever that is, I need to observe what is happening with my business groups. I need to orient myself. What is the best way to address that? And that's where I can make value statements. And value statements for us are quite often, this is your initiative. This is what you're trying to accomplish with that initiative. And this is how we're going to measure that. Yeah. And this is how we're going to show the value. And you very specifically make sure that that value statement is ready. Now it can go to an initiative, a project management side where we can make the decisions around what we're exactly going to do and we act upon that. And then after that initiative is finished, we can start to say, hey, look, now we have value measurement. Most organizations stop there. And I hear, especially in the technology side, but in other areas as well, the moment we deliver something, we're done, aren't we? And I have some like, no, we're not, because now we need to see, we need to prove, we need to demonstrate what the impact was on our strategy, what the impact was on what we tried to accomplish. So we need to close the loop and go back to, okay, what are the outcomes? Now, not outcomes could be a lot of different things, and this is where we quite often see differences in opinion around that. Sometimes it's about knowledge gain. Yeah, sometimes we create something through technology or through processes or through doing things differently. We create better knowledge. Yeah, that can lead to behavioral changes. Yeah, that can lead to different ways we do things, different workflows. In the end, it might actually have a positive effect, hopefully, on conditions, yeah, organizational conditions, economic or budget elements, etc. And you bring that impact back to that strategy. You show that. And I think this is so important. When Jeff just mentioned success stories, this is what we use to start building our success stories. And we say, hey, look, this is what you try to accomplish. Yeah. And maybe it's a cost reduction. Based on that, we think this is the best way to do this. That's based on our situational awareness. Then we actually built that initiative. And then we actually show and demonstrate that we indeed reduced cost. From a business relationship management perspective and from a leadership perspective, and I know most of you will be in a BRM team or something like that, or starting a BRM team. For me, any leader that can quickly define through this impact canvas how context and strategy are linked to initiatives, how it links to outcomes, and demonstrate that through success stories will become successful. So you do this anytime. Yeah, this is not just now when there's maybe a little bit of a potential recession, etc. We see cost reductions, certain budgets are not there anymore. Okay, of course, you need to spend more time on that. But even before that, you always have to do this. Now, some of you have some like, am I doing this only for initiatives? No, I can use the same structure from a BRM capability perspective. If I want to show the value and the impact of my BRM capability, You tell me how your initiatives that you do link directly to context and strategy and what the outcomes are from what you do. And those success stories need to be told from a BRM perspective, from your own perspective, because a lot of proactive work is not always clearly visible, but also making sure that for every initiative you have a clear outcome. This is what we wrote this down in the book, Leading with Impact. And for me, that is, I think, one of the key parts of this. We do workshops around this as well. But for me, this is where a lot of organizations are struggling. You need to have a standard way of actually approaching this. So that's what I'll leave it, and I'll give it back to Jeff to go into the next topic.
Yeah, great. And I think what you're hearing from Peter and what you're hearing from me, we're both hearing these same topics coming up from different organizations, which is why we're addressing this in this way. But you're starting to hear common threads around things. You'll hear it through everything that we say around impact, around BRM teams being able to show ultimate value to business partners and to IT as well, but not just being an organization there that's just a bunch of taskmasters, which kind of leads me into the topic that I hear quite a bit, and that is, what about service gaps? And a lot of times BRMs are asked to do a lot of operational tasks. And many times I'll go into organizations and they already have a BRM program, and I'll say, tell me a little bit about what you do. And here's what I hear. Well, we manage projects, we escalate tickets, or we follow up on service desk tickets. We write specs, we order laptops, we do some training. And I always ask, well, why are you doing that? And they said, well, because if we don't do it, no one else will. And that's really what they've asked us to do. BRM should be doing none of those things. There are very smart and talented people in IT that should be handling all of those things. And when BRM does those things, some point, somebody in management, usually in financial management, is going to say, well, why do we have this BRM thing anyway? What are we getting out of it? And the answer is nothing, because BRM just became an extension of the rest of IT. BRM has its own mission, its own value, its own impact that it's going to make. And as such, it has to stay on its side of the fence. Otherwise, it gets pulled into becoming very operational. But somebody once asked me, well, how do we stay out of it? And so I did this short presentation for one of the BRM communities. And this was my advice to them. Basically, on my advice on how you address those service gaps that if we don't do it, nobody else will, is to use this perspective in this guidance. Number one, BRMs are CIOs for their business partners. You're not entitled, but your business partner thinks of you as the CIO. You have to think of yourself as the CIO, because you have to be able to plan out their technology, advise them on where to go, bring new initiatives for them, help impact their business goals, et cetera. And they want to see you as somebody that can do those things. So you're the de facto CIO for their business partners. Number two, CIOs don't handle service gaps. Does your CIO get involved in any service ticket or manage a project? No, because they're the CIO. So if BRMs are CIOs for the business partners and CIOs don't handle service gaps, here's the most important rule number three. See the above. You shouldn't be doing those things, right? If you are, in fact, going to think of yourself as an IT executive, which you are if you're a BRM, you have to be thinking about getting the right people involved to do the things that they're supposed to do. When somebody once said, but what's going to happen then if they don't do it? Well, sometimes you have to let things break before they can get fixed. But you can't do it if you're representing your business partner. So it's a matter of using your power to escalate things, to identify that this is not getting done. This is not what I'm tasked with doing. We've got to figure out a way to get it done, because when you step in to do it, you are going to be known to be able to do that forever. The quote from Socrates, we are what we repeatedly do. Well, when you repeatedly follow up on service desk tickets or manage projects or get involved with the project team, that's the way they're going to see you do it. But here's the question we get. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done. So what do we do? Well, here are your options. Number one, go ahead and do it yourself. Go ahead and take ownership and address the gap yourself. Well, the good is you fix the gap. The bad, that's what you are known for now. You own it, and now your business partner especially, and your colleagues in IT, will see you as tactical and operational. That's not what we want. So even though you're trying to help, you're not necessarily doing yourself or the organization a favor. We are what we repeatedly do. There, oh, it's Aristotle, not Socrates. Excuse me. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Number two, let it fail. As I just talked about, let it break, disregard it, let the gap exist. Well, the good is that the gap will get noticed. So if it fails, then people take action. The bad is your business partner could be negatively affected. So the third one is create a path forward. Identify what the issue is, work the current problem, but come up with a future solution. It's the old expression. You give a person a fish, they eat for a day, teach them how to fish, they eat for a lifetime. And it's the same thing here. If you have to fix an immediate situation, well, you can identify it and help fix it, but you have to have a path forward saying it can't happen anymore. I'll step in this time, but here's the way that it has to happen in the future. So the immediate gap is addressed, and now you have a plan for the future. And the bad is it requires discipline. And it requires BRMs to step up a little bit. Some are very reticent to say, I can't tell them what to do. Well, you can. You can because you're representing an important area of IT that you have to represent in a way that gets them to do their job and you to stay on your side of the fence. And you might question which one of the three I think is best. I mean, obviously it's this one because both of the other two, the bad on both sides is something that you don't want to necessarily follow. But it obviously goes between good, better, and best. So the strategies to address these service gaps, well, number one, highlight the issue, bring it to the attention of the right level of IT relationship, which falls into meaningful relationships. You've got to build these meaningful relationships on both sides so you can talk to people and they understand where you're coming from so they know what you do. Once you've highlighted it, define it. What is the solution to identify the appropriate roles and responsibilities relative to the strategy of what BRM is supposed to do? You have your mission and your vision, stick to it. What's always interesting is I love it when people always can identify a problem, but they never have a solution. I always used to tell my team, I don't mind you bringing a problem to me, but what's your solution to solve it? Don't just dump the problem on me. So when this happens, it is up to the BRMs to say this happened, here's how I think we ought to solve it. Then propose your solution to IT management and invite alternative ideas. You may not have the sole answer, more about using your influential communications. And then following the process, adhere to it. If there's a process and you've got people to do these things, follow it. Show that discipline and hold other people accountable. This is your executive presence. Because if you have this process and you keep going back and doing those other things, it's never going to be adhered to again. So these are some good ways to address this area relative to how service gaps exist. How do you play in that role and how do you make sure others get involved? Peter?
Great. So you have now defined your BRM team and you're all happy with it. And you have some like, these are the things we're going to do. These are the things we're not going to do. And then you suddenly realize that no one else in the organization has a clue what you're doing. You basically you keep pushing back on certain things, and then there's other things that you have some like they do that, and you most of the time I see with a lot of BRM teams, you've isolated yourself from the rest of the organization. You do not include them in what you do, or you don't clearly define it, or you haven't done anything around role clarity for them to be able to understand this. Now, I want to talk about leadership and specifically business relationship management as a leadership capability. This is something that we've been working on for multiple years now. One of the things that we noticed was certain BRM teams were so isolated from the rest of the organization, from the rest of their own function, that there was no communication towards the other groups. And if you've looked at anything from business relationship management, you will hear immediately relationships are everywhere. Yeah, how is that project manager going to actually do this? Because I can't be involved in every single interaction. I just don't have the time for that. And that's quite often the things we're talking about. Now, that means we need to clearly communicate to other parts of the organization that they have a role in relationship management. They have an understanding that they fulfill certain activities, and you might be coached by a business relationship manager to help you to actually do that in a correct way. Yeah, that enterprise architect, you need to say, hey, look, this is how you need to build a relationship with this specific group, because otherwise things are going to go wrong. Yeah, if you say the wrong things or if you're not using the right language, etc., those kind of things happen. Can I have the next slide? So one of the things we now work on is, and this comes back from the perspective that if I look at leadership capabilities or leadership skills and general leadership skills, relationship management doesn't come up. Yeah, there is one area where it comes up, and that is in business development or sales. They know I need to build a relationship. But anyone else from a leadership perspective does not see that they have a significant role in relationship management. Now, if I look at my business capabilities in an organization, yeah, and I might have say I need to have that relationship management capability because that makes us strong, building relationships across the organization. Yes, I have a BRM team that are dedicated to that, but sometimes I don't have a BRM team. I have leaders that do this part-time. They still need to do a lot of the elements of business relationship management. Now, if I look at my standard leadership capabilities, the collective skills and competencies of leaders in an organization, they fulfill those business capabilities, but they also need to fulfill the BRM capability. And that is what we quite often call the BRM leadership capability. So why is this important and how do you do this in a practical way? As if you're a BRM team, yeah, and you need to work with other leaders in your own organization or your business partners, you sometimes have to clearly communicate, or most of the time you have to clearly communicate to them what they need to do, what their role is in business relationship management. So get them involved in that. Get them to recognize that they have a role in relationship management as well. You might maybe own the relationship, if you want to call it that way, but sometimes other people need to be there as well. And I think this is a downfall of a lot of business relationship management teams, is that they don't spend enough time with their colleagues around what talking about what they do, but also not clearly defining for those colleagues what you expect from them from a relationship perspective. How do you want to be included in that? And I fully agree that not everyone is good at building relationships. Yeah, there are certain people that you have something like, I wish they would just stay in their office and don't talk to anyone. They're brilliant, but they shouldn't communicate to everyone because everyone will be upset when they do that. We have those people. I know you still need to build a relationship with them, by the way, and that's still important. But for me, it is so important that any leader will understand what their role is from a relationship perspective, because relationships, good relationships, drive great collaboration, drive great results. And if I bring it back to value, I want to see business relationship management just as a means to an end. I want to see the collaboration happen between a lot of different people that understand that that network of people is going to deliver the results. And that's what we quite often actually focus on. So for me, anytime I talk to BRM teams, my first question always is, have you talked to your peers and have you explained what you expect from them? Now, one comment I want to make, I do not necessarily talk about business relationship management with executives. And the reason is they sometimes don't understand what we're trying to do. They don't always understand what their role is in it. I talk to executives around, you want results, you want value, you want impact. Okay, how are we going to get that? Through collaboration. Because these different teams need to work well together. And how do we help you with getting that collaboration going? Through business relationship management, because we need to build a relationship between those teams, because then they will actually collaborate better. You start with the result message. Yeah, you start saying you want results. That means these teams need to collaborate. And yes, we can get that collaboration being more efficient and effective through good business relationship management. But business relationship management for me is a means to an end. I want to. I think that these are all the topics. Jeff, are there anything? Well, let's. I just haven't looked at chat. I'm going to ask Elka basically at this moment. Are there
Yeah,
questions?
I think what we want to do now is those were the prepared remarks. Those were four topics that we both Peter and I were talking about. We hear constantly from our clients, and we divided and conquered and took two each. What we want to do now is take some of the questions that you may have live. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like and ask the questions, or if they're in chat, Elka, you can certainly help us with that. Elka?
Yes, there are some questions in the chat. I was just waiting to see if anybody has a question live at the moment. Otherwise, we'll just go through the questions in the chat.
Okay.
The first one, and Jeff, I'll punt this one to you because the second one is specifically addressed to Peter. If your organization's business relationship managers are generally reactive, do you really have business relationship managers?
If they are reactive, do you really have business relationship managers is an excellent question. I think there are times when BRMs are reactive and should be reactive. I mean, obviously, we want business partners to take some initiative as well. But in general, you want your BRMs to be much more proactive. You want your BRMs to be immersed enough in business partner activity to be able to identify ways technology or whatever area you're coming from can help them become better. How can I drive growth? How can I make them more effective? And how can I make them more efficient? If you are just reactive, what you're doing is you're waiting for the request to come in and then you're acting on it. Well, I don't need a BRM for that. I can have somebody who is a liaison or a clerk do those things, which I don't recommend anybody does. But I mean, it's okay for business partners to say, we have this idea, we need this request, at which point you are reacting to it in a sense. But even in those cases, when a business partner asks for something, it's not about taking the request saying, oh, okay, I see you have budget for it. Here you go, IT. It's going back to your business partners and acting as a true advisor and advocate and saying, first off, if they're excited about something, you be excited. Wow, this sounds really interesting. Tell me what you're trying to do here. How is this going to work? How does it tie to your strategy? What do you see the outcome and the results from it? What's the ROI? And you don't say it in a way that's pushing back on them, trying to say no. You want them to know that you're on their side, but I'm your advocate. And the more I know about what you're doing, the better off I can be to advocate for it in IT. So you're reacting to their request, but you're being proactive in the sense of understanding what they want, because don't assume when business partners ask for something that what they're asking for is what they really want or need. They don't know what they don't know. And so they put requests in, and then IT starts working on a lot of things. And then they give them what they ask for, and it doesn't do what they want. Who gets blamed but IT? But there's the flip side of this, which is the proactive side. Like I said, business partners don't know what they don't know. And so the more a BRM can understand what the business partner's challenges, opportunities, and operations performance is, the better off they're going to be to take that blend of business and technology and say, I have something for you. I have an idea. Here are some things that you can do that may involve technology and may not. Maybe it's a process where they see them using technology and find a better way to use it because they understand the solution better. So I think there is a reactive component. We don't want to just push things out at the business, but BRMs in their thought process, in their suggestions, in their activities need to be much more proactive in being that strategic advisor, that CIO to help business partners grow and become more effective.
I'm just going to respond to this, what Jeff said. Yeah. And can we have the next question?
Absolutely. I know the questions are coming in, so I might just prompt you to be a little bit shorter. Question for Peter.
Yes.
Do you still talk about the outcome if the original idea came from the business and not from the BRM?
Yeah, you know what? Yes, outcomes are business focused. So I don't care where they come from. I care that we capture them. And sometimes the business relationship manager might help with defining the outcomes, but in the end, it's the business group that says, this is the outcome I want. Is that always easy? No, because they sometimes don't really know what they do. You need to ask very specific questions. You need to help them. You need to guide them. Also, and that's coming back to being proactive, you need to tell them sometimes that being focused on outcomes might actually get you to understand that you need to do things differently and that you can become more proactive based on that as well. One of the results I've seen from business relationship managers really looking at, for instance, the impact canvas or focus on value and impact, that they start to have less challenges with I need this, I need that, and it's more around okay, hey, we have multiple things we want to do, and based on the information we have, we can become better focused on what real outcomes are that we need. And in most organizations where there is a good focus on value and impact, we see that we get less requests. More requests get stopped earlier on because the outcomes are not there or we don't see them yet. Now, sometimes we need to work on something that doesn't have a clear outcome and that can have all different kind of reasons. So from an outcome perspective, business relationship managers need to help the organization to define them, but that will include your business groups, your business owner, your product managers, your service owners, whatever you have. Together, we need to agree upon the outcomes, and that's why we quite often use a standard structure for that, so we can easily talk about that. And I'll keep it at that.
I'm not adding anything. I don't want to get yelled at again.
Okay, and I see Lisa has her hand up. So Lisa, do you have a question or additional comment you would like to share?
Hi, Jeff and Peter. Good to see you both. I think I've met you both at least virtually. And this may be a bit of a loaded question, so feel free to differ. But if you have thoughts on how to basically get started building a BRM program in a large organization that already has system tech support-based relationships that are a little bit disjointed, to move towards more of a proactive approach, and how to maybe frame that as you're kind of trying to bring that in and promote it.
Yeah. First off, don't ever ask if Peter or I have thoughts on anything, because we have thoughts on everything. So
okay, good to hear. Thanks.
Yeah. So that is a loaded question, and it's one that has a long answer, which we don't have time for. But I would say this: whenever you're building out a BRM program, it can't just start, because BRM is not necessarily known the way it should be throughout the industry and throughout IT. It's a fairly new construct in IT, maybe the last 10 years, 15 years. So it's about defining why you're doing BRM and what it is. It starts with having a vision, and that vision doesn't come from the BRM team. It comes from IT management, maybe some business partners and leaders, about why are we doing this and what is success going to look like when we're done? Because that enables you then to build your BRM strategy, which identifies what you do. And when you identify what you do and how you do it, and your CIO blesses it, then it's a matter of taking it to two different audiences. And well, obviously, there's a huge component about building the team to do that. I'm going to leave that part out for a second. I'm going to talk about all the external part, and that is you've got to weave this into the fabric of IT. If you build BRM, you talked about your support areas and other parts of IT, they don't know necessarily what BRM is, and more than likely, they don't care because they're looking to do what they're doing. So if your CIO blesses it, it's a matter of saying to the rest of IT, here's what we're going to do, here's what BRM does and why we're doing it. How do we make this collaborate and work well within the fabric of IT? Because if you don't do that, you have a lot of this happening. People going around each other, they're not listening to me, we're not working together. And then the other part of this is you've got to take it to your business partners and explain to them why you're there. But why you're there, because otherwise they're going to think you're there to fix an application, order some laptops. That's the way IT traditionally works with business partners. So it's a matter of being able to explain, here's what we're doing, here's what you get out of this, here's how we're going to help you, but here's what we need from you also to be able to do it. They have to have some skin in the game. So it's about building this vision, this plan, and moving forward. with getting the right people involved as to the direction things are going. And there is that component about building the team that we didn't even address that's huge as well.
I want to add to that when we work with BRM teams, I mean, and like I said, we quite often not only work with IT, but also work with that side. And to be honest, the same problems happen. I mean, if you have a sales and marketing group that can't stand each other, you still have to build a relationship between them because they have to work together. The key thing for me is that business relationship management, like I said, it's not about business relationship management, it's about results and it's about collaboration. So you need to bring that back. But I want you to think about how you do business relationship management very deliberate and intentional. Yeah. Very specifically focus on what will add value, what will not add value. Yeah. And thinking about your relationship management continuously around what do I work on from a relationship perspective and what do I not work on. And like I said, you don't have to have necessarily BRM team. It helps, but you can do a lot of things in relationship management that can show the value of it. I've done these deliberate things to be able to get better collaboration going with this result. And that's when then your success stories are, bringing us back to the success stories, that you can then show your executives. We need to have more attention on that. So in the beginning, you might only do one or two. Eventually, we'll have some like, hey, that requires us to spend more time on that. You will never have enough BRMs in an organization. There's always more work than business relationship managers. So work with that as well and be very deliberate and intentional. And I'm going to give it back to Elka for the next.
Yes, Lisa, did that address your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And then Michael has his hand up. Michael, do you have a question, comment?
So, sorry, I can't turn my video on. Jeff, you know of our experiences here at Hackensack, and thanks for putting this together. It's great to see you guys again. You know, I think you guys kind of answered our challenges here that we have. So we have a business relationship management team. We know what we're supposed to do at our hospitals. Now we saw that the new initiative for 2025 is business relationship management, but no one speaks to it. No one understands it. And that's our challenge that we face every day. And I believe a couple of my colleagues are also on this call and they can attest to that as well. You know, and we're trying to get around that. You know, a lot of teams always depend on us. We can give them the answers they need, but they're really not sure what we do. It's just we're the go-to people. You know, and for us, that's try to put that together has always been a challenge for us. So, you know, you kind of did answer the questions, but I'm just looking for a little bit more feedback on how can we kind of step to that next level. That make sense?
That makes sense. Let me address this, and then Jeff can add some things. I'll keep it short, but one of the things that I find, especially in healthcare, I work with a lot of different healthcare organizations, and one of the things I found is that be very clearly focused on what kind of communication channels you want to have. So you have basically three basic ones and every organization has those, but from a healthcare perspective as well. One is your service desk channel. There's certain communication going through there. There needs to be a service delivery channel and service delivery issues, larger issues that need to be addressed from a performance perspective, etc. That is a channel you need to define. And then you have your BRM channel, which is focused on looking at focusing on business relationship management and the innovation side, and specifically if you're in the technology side, you need to do that. So three channels. So you have your service desk, your service delivery, and your BRM channel. And if you define those correctly, it becomes easier to say, hey, business relationship management fits there. These are other tasks that need to be done. And that requires role clarity in the organization. But start with those type of activities to get clear what the BRM role is, because otherwise other people will start to actually get confused. Why do I need to call you, or why do I need to call you for that, etc.? It's just a matter of making sure that the communication channels in your organization are extremely clear. So I'll leave it at that. Jeff, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah. Just to add on to that in the same ilk, if you will. Why do we think people know what BRMs do? They don't. And frankly, the name in and of itself is such a nebulous term, business relationship management. What does it do? And so when you have when you're dealing with business partners that don't necessarily understand IT that well, and now you say, "Oh, we have BRMs for you." They don't know what that is. It is our responsibility from a BRM perspective. This goes back to the vision and the strategy to define ourselves and who we are, but you've got to connect this to who they are. This is where empathy comes in. If you were sitting in one of your hospitals or your doctors, your administrators, they're gonna hear a message from you differently than people in HR and finance will. You have to gear the message towards them to explain what you do, but why are you doing it? Why do we have the need for this? And then how is it going to affect them? Which means you have to really understand what they do, not at the top level, but what they do. Then it becomes an easier way to explain what BRM is and what it does. And when you say, yeah, 2025 is the year of BRM, it at least have some context and some meaning as to why you're there. Because again, people think of IT traditionally as a technology department that we put requests into. BRM is not that. BRM is strategic, and you've got to tell that story to them in terms that they will understand relative to what they do.
Okay, did that answer the question?
It's put it into perspective. That's what I can say to that. So
Excellent, excellent.
thank you.
And Daisy, you have your hand up as well. A question for either Peter or Jeff?
Thank you. I hear, first of all, great conversation, and I do enjoy the dynamic of this presentation, how you alternated. That's great. But I also you mentioned a lot about the purpose, and the impact of a success story. And I'm working on that with my team. And I wanted to know if there are toolkits out there or resources, kind of like templates, so that we can kind of like mimic the type of the successful success story, how to present a success story, how to deliver that information.
Yeah, so I will start, and Peter will have something very specific for you on this topic for sure. I know he's like frothing at the mouth right now. So I'm gonna let him get into that a little bit, but I want to just bring out a point here based on your question. I talk about this quite a bit. BRM is an art form, and I get really concerned when I hear about templates and toolkits. Not that they're not valuable, they are. But if you use them in the right way, they can really help you. But BRM is an art form, and you don't learn how to be an artist by reading a paint by number book. And I think a lot of times, many of us come from a technical background, and we're looking for that template. We're looking for that toolkit, that solution to say, okay, this is how I do BRM. And when you do that, BRM becomes very mechanical. And so when you're talking about purpose and impact, it's about you understanding that you are the artist. You're going to put paint to canvas. And Daisy, how you're going to do it is different. How Michael's going to do it is different than how anybody else is. There are going to be a whole lot of similarities to it, but it's about understanding your organization and the impact that you're going to make. Yeah, the templates and the toolkits are absolutely going to be valuable, but understanding that you've got to look at this as the art form and how you're going to apply it cannot just be this ITIL standard practice. There you go, there's BRM. That's when it becomes tactical and operational and doesn't work. Peter?
Yeah, it fully agree with Jeff here, and I think this is one of the reasons why we quite often, when we use type of templates and examples, etc., we actually help you more to understand how to use them. But you see it every single time; it's different. What you think as is value might not be value from a business group, etc. So you need to align it very well to the target audience, and making sure that they understand what it is. We've seen people actually trying to do too much. Sometimes you need to keep it very simple and drive just those success stories through. Can you have a structure for it? Yes. And quite often, okay, what is the problem we had? What is the solution we actually came up with? And what was the results of that? What was the impact? And we quite often use impact statements for those. Again, a structure to help you to define it, not necessarily that it always needs to be in that exact format. Are there examples? Yes. I know Purdue has always done their impact reports, etc., and some of those were really good. From a beginning, it was a success story. Okay, what the role of the BRM was, and later on, there were way more impact statements from a business group. So testimonials, get them involved. If you want to learn how to do success stories, I always say look at marketing. Marketing knows how to do testimonials, knows how to build a video of someone to saying, hey, these are the key points. And that's where the success actually comes from. And the constant focus on that is going to be important. Yeah. And don't think, okay, I'll do this at the end of the year, because at the end of the year, you don't remember what you did at the beginning of the year. So this is a constant activity that you need to actually address. And I'll leave it at that. And I think there is one more question, El, that we can answer potentially. If Daisy actually, if that gave your answer, of course. Sorry.
You covered you covered almost everything, single thing that we are seeing actually. So we are an ITO structured organization,
There you go.
higher ed. Number one, and then we did the exact same thing. We were collecting the data at the end, but you are so correct. Collecting it all at the end, you miss so much information. So that's what I'm trying to do now. Get our team involved and get our team to just deliver that information early as we go, as we make those success stories happen. But this is very helpful. That's exactly what I had in mind. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just as a comment on that, business relationship management is complex. And there's a lot of different elements to that. Don't get into, okay, I can do best practices. And that's what Jeff said, basically. It for me, it doesn't make sense. Don't try to force yourself in a best practice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I always wonder about best practices. Best practice from who? Who decided what's the best practice?
It basically, a best practice for me is like it's a clear process, and we know exactly what the results are from that, and that's it. Yeah, and in a complex environment, we never know what the results are going to be. So it's yeah, absolutely good.
Okay, Len has a hand up, and I know we can maybe squeak in one last quick question from Len.
Sure, maybe this can be a math question, or just a quick numeric answer. Okay.
42.
42. I'll accept that. Have a great day, everyone. Sorry. Can you guesstimate how much more complex, by maybe like a factor or possibly exponentially, that BRM is in a world where you have pretty much a fully remote IT organization, including the BRMs themselves. So that face-to-face interaction on campus with the business or on site with the business partners doesn't happen so much. And an IT shared services model where you have, I just saw Jeff smile and I don't like it because this is going to be a bad answer, but a shared services model where some business partner, functional user organizations kind of dominate the use of IT resources and are allowed to dominate, such that the smaller fish have maybe more challenges getting things like sorted out.
Go ahead, Peter. You can take the first shot at this.
I don't think there is a difference between virtual teams or shared teams. The complexity of it might increase a little bit, but I see very successful virtual teams and I see very successful teams that meet face to face. Is face to face sometimes easier? Yes, to build relationships, but in the end, I think it is working within the environment you have and making it successful. Finding new ways of doing things, I think, is the key part. It's not easy to actually just say, "Hey, this is just going to be different." Jeff?
Yeah. There's if the world is virtual, if your world is virtual, then you operate in that world. So I agree with Peter. I don't think it's more complex. I don't think it's as beneficial. That in-person connection, that interaction, that human connection means a tremendous amount, not only to BRMs, but to everybody, and the amount of work that you can get done. But if it's the world you live in, then it's the world you live in. We were all in the pandemic and we had to operate. You just have to find the other skills that work a little better. The shared services question, boy, there's a lot to talk about, so I'm going to make it as brief as I can. Shared services models, I've seen so many organizations in IT. I was part of one that tried this all the time. It sounds great. IT is going to be a shared service, and we're going to share this service across. And every time it starts to get implemented, it just fails miserably because it's exactly what you just said. It's a shared service, but they want it more, or I'm going to use it more, or we have to be focused here more. And the concept makes sense. But there are areas where you can have this shared service, whether it's an HR or a finance thing, even parts of IT. But BRM, to make BRM a shared service across an organization, dilutes it to the point where it has no teeth. So if I am the BRM for a business partner, they need to know that when they're talking to me, that I can influence IT enough to get the stuff done that they want, that I'm their CIO, that I have that gravitas to get it done, that talking to me is going to help. When I go back to IT as part of a shared service, they're like, yeah, fine, get in line because I have all these other things to do. Well, at some point, the business partner is going to think, I could do that. I don't really need you. So, yeah, there are parts of IT that can be a shared service. But for the most part, BRM is something that it's the strategic advisor, it's the technology lead or HR lead, finance lead, whatever area it is, for that business partner. And they got to know that they're doing their work for them in a sense and helping them out the best they can. The shared services model operates diametrically opposed in that in many cases. And I smiled because I've just seen so many cases of this where this is some process or financially driven, hey, shared service is going to save us money, and it ends up doing the exact opposite. You have to operate in that world, you do, but you want to build the rules out where BRM can be as independent and fight for the things that it needs and is taken serious as much as it possibly can. Much bigger conversation, but great question.
Cool. Thank you
And we can
both.
talk.
Very helpful.
We can talk at least 3 more hours around all these topics, but we're at the end, Jeff. So I will hand it off to you for the closing.
Yeah, so Peter and I have talked a lot about this, as we said. We didn't know how this was going to go. We did agree on one thing at the beginning, that we were going to agree with each other, but we weren't going to do it in a way that if we didn't agree, we were going to say it. We were going to be honest. But when I said we're going to agree with each other, it was that we don't want to counter other points just to make a point. I think what you saw here, Peter talked about us being competitors. I mean, we're in the same industry, but we're colleagues, we're friends. And we come at it in the same spirit of growing the BRM community. And I think what you saw here was that we're very much aligned in the way that things have to happen. We have a different look on things, which is what you want, but we're all after the same thing and trying to drive it. So we didn't know how it was going to go, and I'm really happy with the way that he and I interacted. I hope you were too. I hope you enjoyed this. We are recording the session. I guarantee you, Peter will post it. I am going to post it as well. Assuming that he's willing, I think we'll do another one of these, maybe later in the year. This was a lot of fun. Elka, thank you so much for moderating this for us. So with
Thanks,
that
everyone.
said,
And
yeah, thank you.
And if you have additional questions, and we'll address those later on. Feel free to contact us. Both Jeff and I will happily answer all your questions. So, thank you very much, and enjoy basically your sunshine, Jeff.
Yeah, we'll do. We'll do. Enjoy your snow.
Yeah.